Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley speaking to you from Washington, D.C. Our last broadcast of the old year, 2011, the year of the dupes, coming to an end. The greatest market of dupes in recent world history, from the Middle East to, unfortunately, some of the occupied sites. The problem has been a mass strike process, hijacked, misdirected, propagandized, misled, taken over, and so forth, with the hope of aborting it. But we think that the mass strike is going to be back in 2012, stronger than ever, with the possibility of pushing aside the foundation-funded fakers, the left liberal mushheads, the Michael Moores, the Amy Goodmans, the Kevin Zeeses, the David Swansons, the misleaders who guarantee defeat, that Gnome Chomsky will also be swept aside and discredited. For all of these people are simply promoting themselves and getting money, in many cases, either through what they're selling or through the fees that they're collecting. So we don't need any of these characters. Now, the very interesting thing in the last 72 hours or so is that we're in the middle of a war emergency, and we want to talk about Iran, Israel, the Straits of Hormuz. But let's go first to the Syrian front. We now have these Arab League observers. There are about 150 of them, and they have been going through the city of Homs. And they have found, and I'm quoting, nothing frightening. Now, I wouldn't put it quite this way, but maybe you can see what they're driving at. The Arab League observers have found nothing frightening in the city of Homs. They are, in other words, refusing to validate the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the Gay Girl in Damascus, the Syrian National Council, the Free Syrian Army, and the rest of this troop of pro-NATO destabilizers whose program, I guess we have to say, comes down to bombing Syria, fomenting civil war inside Syria. Nothing frightening, say, in this case, the inspectors, the observers from the Arab League. The activists, so-called, are saying something quite opposite. When you read these newspaper accounts and you read activists say, right, activists, then be reminded those activists are the extremely dubious, shadowy figures of the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. These are the new Chalabis. Remember Chalabi, who went to the neocons in 2002 and he said, invade Iraq, it'll be a cakewalk. Or remember Source Curveball of 2002, 2003. These are self-interested people from the target country who sell a bill of goods to eager imperialists, be they Obama warmongers, Wall Street warmongers, neocons, whoever they are, who are eager to hear this kind of thing. So when you read that activist say, remember, don't believe it. So if the Syrian National Council under Galyouni, this lounge lizard from Paris, and as his people are all freaking out, we have this woman called Basma Kadmani. Basma Kadmani operates from the front line of the struggle, which is in Dubai. So she's out there in Dubai, and she's telling Reuters that if the Arab League observers don't parrot the story, the narrative being told by the Syrian National Council and the Syrian Observatory, then that will increase despair among the Syrians, and that will increase violence. So you better cave in and repeat our story, or you will have blood on your hands, observers. So the entire edifice of lies that I've been denouncing is collapsing. I was in Homs 5 to 6 weeks before these Arab League observers, and I told you what what I found evidence of. CIA death squads. The Free Syrian Army is death squads. A lot of them are deserters, draft dodgers, organized crime figures, terrorists, right? Self-starting fanatics, psychotics from the Muslim Brotherhood inside Syria. And the rest of them are your Chechens, your Afghansi, your Libyan recycled killers like Belhaj. You've got your Iraqi recycled killers coming in there. And it looks like Belhaj, the butcher of Pakistan and then the butcher of Tripoli, is now the butcher of Idlib, that is to say the Syrian town closest to the Turkish border. Notice still that the rebellion in Syria, the death squad activity, is strictly limited to the northern border area near Turkey, that's Idlib, the border with Iraq, Kurdistan, the border with Jordan, that's Daraa, and the border with Lebanon, and that's Homs and that's Hama. And we're even told that, and I don't quite have the source on this now, but that Al-Qaeda groups have infiltrated Syria through Lebanon, and they are now the ones, among the others, that are active in the Homs, Hama, and I would add Banyas, Tartus area. So it is a peripheral rebellion fomented by NATO intelligence. There's a NATO office in Turkey now which runs that part of this thing, and they're undoubtedly working hand in glove with the bloody terrorist Belhaj. One other interesting thing about Belhaj, Aznar, you remember him, the ultra-reactionary Spanish prime minister. But it just, evil does good, so let's see what he sometimes has to say. Aznar says that Belhaj, now a hero of democracy on the northern Syrian front, is implicated in the 2004 Madrid train bombings that killed almost 200 people in Madrid. I got a chance to talk to some of those victims going through there in 2005. So Belhaj has now spread his trail of blood from Pakistan. He's been out in Indonesia. He's been in Iraq. He's been in Libya. He's been in Spain, and now he wants to bring the wonderful benefits of democracy to southern Turkey and indeed to Idlib in northern Syria. So those are the allies of NATO. Al-Qaeda terrorist killers. Belhaj is the number one guy. Belhaj, also known as Hassadi. You know him, right? It was a scandal when he was running Derna back in the springtime. Then he became the governor of Tripoli, and now he's been sent by Jalil to help run the destabilization of Syria. Now, we also have reports. U.S. diplomats are leaning on the observers. We have Feltman of the State Department who basically tells these Arab League observers, you make damn sure that your report comes down strongly on the side of the anti-Assad opposition, or else. The State Department spokesperson here at Foggy Bottom is a guy called Toner. So Toner, a little bit more subtle, says, we're expecting those observers to be intrepid, in other words, to mouth the CIA NATO intelligence line. Now, we're told, and this is really interesting, we're always being shown these pictures, right? Al Jazeera always has these films. France 24 has these films. I pointed out in recent broadcasts that if you look carefully at some of them, there are green trees and people in their shirt sleeves. And since I've been in Homs, I know in Homs it's cold. It's winter now. It was winter already a month ago and 6 weeks ago in Homs. So if you find people wearing shirt sleeves, these are not, repeat, not recent films. We've even got a defector from Al Jazeera who wants to tell you about how this is all done, and we'll get to his story in just a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. Keep up with everything, of course, at the indispensable website, tarpley.net, the Twitter feed, Webster G. Tarpley. So, the Syrian... the observers sent to Syria by the Arab League have found nothing frightening. Now, I wouldn't put it that way. I would say they found death squads as other observers have said, armed gangs, ragtag groups, I would say death squads, very, very short and to the point, that are operating there. These are too weak to hold a continuous front. In other words, they can't seize territory and defend it. This is urban guerrilla warfare carried out, based on some neighborhoods that have a strong fanatic Muslim Brotherhood percentage, but and also intimidating people, right, forcing them, to be quiet or you'll be shot by Belhaj and his gang. They're operating in Homs and Hama, and whenever you see these pictures, when you see some child that's been shot, ask yourself, how do you know who did the shooting? I got some guy this week saying, I did a program with Bonnie Faulkner on KPFA in Berkeley and San Francisco, and the guy came in, he sent me an email saying, this is so different from what I've been hearing from Amy Goodman at Democracy Now!, and it's so different from what I'm hearing from Al Jazeera. What should I conclude? You shouldn't conclude that they're lying. You should conclude that Amy Goodman proved herself over the last decade as a staunch backer of the Bush administration theory of terrorism, and now she's a staunch backer of the Obama theory of destabilization in the Middle East. And maybe this has something to do with the largesse shown to her by the Ford Foundation, one of the main operations, one of the main apparatuses of internal control, domination, and indeed counterinsurgency here in the United States. So there's all a big lie. Now, Feltman is leaning on the Arab League observers, right? You better support the anti-Assad, pro-opposition line, or else, right? There's a personal threat. Toner says be intrepid. We've also got the Syrian National Council putting up this big complaint that the president of the observer team is a Sudanese. Oh, he's a Sudanese. It's General Mustafa al-Dabi, who works for General Bashir, right, the president of Sudan, who, of course, along with so many other African leaders, in particular black African leaders, has been indicted by this racist imperialist international criminal court, right, this fake tribunal for imperialists that has been hoaxed up in the Netherlands. So they're saying, oh, he can't be objective because he's from Sudan. Is it because he's black, dear members of the Free Syrian Army and dear members of the Syrian National Council? Is that got something to do with it? So they want to pick and choose. They want everybody from Saudi Arabia, undoubtedly, everybody from Doha, of course, who's going to give them what they want. Now, we've also got a member of the Syrian National Council says, this mission, he whines, this mission of the observers is born dead. It's going to be ineffective. Ineffective for them means it will not validate our lunatic narrative. And remember, every number that you've seen, activists say it means the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, sometimes engaged in a bidding war with the Syrian National Council. And when they say Free Syrian Army, they mean Death Squads United. That's who that is. The indigenous death squads made up of Muslim Brotherhood fanatics, made up of draft dodgers, criminal elements, deserters, you name it, and these foreign elements brought in, paid for by Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Doha, Qatar, and the rest of them. We even have this inside story. This is really interesting. There's a guy called Afshin Ratansi, R-A-T-T-A-N-S-I. A-F-S-H-I-N is his first name. Afshin Ratansi was one of the first journalists to go to work for the English language division of Al Jazeera. And for whatever reason, I'd be interested to know, he is now out. He's in London, and he was interviewed on Russia Today. And he said, look, we're always putting up these cell phone videos, but none of these can be verified. And nevertheless, the Western press, the Western networks, cable TV, the Western news agencies, all take this stuff as gospel truth. They simply buy the Syrian Observatory version. And as I've said before, don't limit yourself to the Syrian Observatory version that you're going to get from Amy Goodman and from from Noam Chomsky and the rest of these left liberal mushheads, fakers, imperialist tools, whatever they are, go and see what Sana says about it. There's something called Syrian Arab News Agency. Give them a chance, right? It used to be journalism would be to give two sides of a question like this, but no, we can't do that anymore. It's just that it's totally unverifiable. So this has not been a good week for the destabilizers. Now, I would also call your attention, first of all, to the Afshin Ratansi interview on Russia Today, RT, not the American one, but the European one. And there's also an interview with Thierry Meyssan, who visited Syria. Indeed, I think is speaking from Syria in this interview. And he points out that one of the principal dangers are these economic sanctions, but that Syria has now made an accord, in effect, an arrangement with Iran and China that will guarantee the economic basis of continuing an independent, non-imperialist puppet state in Syria. In other words, a Syrian government is distinct from a NATO, CIA puppet state, led by somebody like Belhaj. So all of this going on. We're told today that there's a big demonstration in Homs, activists say. So I would say that piece of news is simply garbage. Don't even listen to it. One interesting thing, remember General Aoun had warned me Turkey is the weakest country in the region. Turkey is weak. It's split between secular and Islamist, and it's got this big Kurdish minority and a small but active and rather wealthy Alawite minority. The Kurds are now coming into play. The Turks, I don't know why they did this, but they did it. They bombed the hell out of a couple of dozen Kurds and killed a bunch of them inside Turkey. And the Kurds, certain Kurdish organizations, are now calling for a general uprising against Turkey. And this is simply inevitable. You play with fire by attacking and putting the pressure on Syria. You're fomenting a civil war or trying to foment a civil war in northern Syria by letting NATO organize these death squads. Well, war is a two-way street, isn't it? And if you're the aggressor, you can't go whining. Interesting. France 24 had a British journalist on there, and he was asked, do you think the UN Security Council will get involved in the fact that Turkey is killing all these Kurds? And he said, no, it's a purely internal affair. This is Turks killing Kurds on Turkish territory. No need for the United Nations, right? Talk about double standards. Talk about hypocrisy. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. As Thierry Meyssan points out in that RT Russia Today interview, the goal of Belhaj and his gang is to create Islamic Emirates on the Turkish border, on the Iraqi border, on the Jordanian border, and maybe even on the Lebanese border with the help of Al-Qaeda. So that's what you got there. Islamic Emirates, or Arab socialism of the Syrian Ba'ath Party variety, with all those progressive features, that admirable social safety net compares very favorably with any other places in the world.